You're all a bunch of idiots. Look at what you did. You always complain about Ubisoft slop, but then something cool comes out of their pipeline, and you don't even buy it, and now the team's been disbanded. Yeah, you're so stupid. When the first trailer for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown came out, it was met with a wave of hate because of multiple factors, and some of them are stupid, but some of them I get, right? Like, it's not completely unreasonable for people to want to play as the actual Prince of Persia in a Prince of Persia game instead of, you know, his bodyguard. But also, I don't know how you could have seen this trailer and not felt like the game had a ton of promise. And when it released a couple of months later, it instantly became one of my favorite Metroidvanias ever, and it's still solidly in contention for my favorite game of 2024. But the team behind it didn't even survive until the end of the year. Now obviously, not all of the blame for this game's commercial failure lies in consumers never giving it a chance. I think its initial exclusivity to the Ubisoft store on PC absolutely ruined its chances of finding an audience. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the main fanbase for Metroidvania specifically is on the Switch and PC players mainly use Steam, so it kinda shot itself in the foot there. It's also the perfect genre for Steam Deck, but it had no native support there since it was exclusive to Ubisoft Connect, and while I did use some back alley hick maneuver to get it to connect to my Steam Deck, that's something that most people are not willing to do. Now obviously Ubisoft knows that making things exclusive to their store will lower the sales projections compared to if it's available everywhere, but the hope is that the amount of players that get cut in this process are offset by them hosting the sale on their own store. Or at the very least, enough people start using Ubisoft Connect to play a particular game for it to grow and eventually pay dividends down the line. But while that might work for some of their games, especially those that are less reliant on PC sales, the demographics and habits of Metroidvania players were never gonna play nice with this model. Even still, it feels as though the game's been let down by the general public, to the point that as a fan of this game who was eagerly awaiting the DLC, I didn't even know that that DLC had dropped until weeks later when I stumbled on the launch trailer while looking for video footage. I've actually had this video planned for a couple weeks before I heard the news of the dev team because I had a sinking feeling seeing these trailer numbers. The writing was already on the wall with how little a game of this quality was being discussed. And then, in the time it took me to get to this topic, news broke out that this game sold poorly and would not be getting a sequel. The silver lining here is that the employees who worked on this game haven't been fired. The team has instead been moved to other projects within the Montpellier studio, including a Rayman project, nice, and other more surefire wins for Ubisoft, like Beyond Good and Evil 2! With the team now gone and the sequel pitch denied, this is likely the last time we'll see this particular rendition of Prince of Persia, so I want to at least take a couple of minutes to talk about why you should play this game, especially because it's now available on Steam if that's your main method of playing games, as well as on every single console, including previous gens, so really, you have absolutely no excuse not to play it. The Lost Crown has one of the most fluid and open combat systems I've seen in a side-scroller. You're very small on your screen, and your jumps and attacks and dashes take you very far, which makes combat encounters feel like a blank canvas where you're free to express yourself however you'd like, something that only gets more satisfying as you unlock extra aerial moves and movement abilities. Combat is quick and satisfying, there's a slick-ass parry mechanic, so you know I'm happy, and parrying special attacks can lead to a cinematic finisher that strikes the perfect balance between flashiness and not actually disrupting the pace of combat. A lot of the abilities you get throughout this game are used for both platforming and fighting, some of them becoming very crucial to your arsenal, and others honestly just being there for a bit of flair. One of my favorite abilities is a really great play on the classic Prince of Persia time-bending shenanigans, where you essentially create an impression of yourself at a certain point in time, and then reverse yourself back to that position while the rest of time moves forward. Essentially, it's like a reverse teleport system. It's not completely mandatory to use in most combat encounters, but pulling it out mid-combo is still fun as hell, and it's used all over the place for platforming. The game is also great at forcing you to use more of your abilities during boss fights, where certain attacks can only be avoided reliably by using all these different moves, which turns the bosses into almost like a combat puzzle. The bosses are also perfectly balanced in my opinion. They're not ball-bustingly hard, but they will test you, particularly near the end, and there's a good collection of main bosses as well as mini-bosses that give this game a nice tight pace. I have similar praise for the platforming in this game. Most of it just kind of helps create a sense of verticality to this world and breaks up fighting with engaging but basic exploration challenges, while some side objectives, and even a few mainline paths, require a bit more dexterity. None of this is Path of Pain level difficulty, mainly because you have so many more options on how to wiggle your way around spike traps here, but they're also not a cakewalk, so if your problem with Metroidvanias is their length, pace, or difficulty curves, I can tell you that is not a problem here. The quality of life in this game is damn near perfect. And that includes clever fixes to other common Metroidvania problems. If you've only seen one piece of discussion about this game, chances are it's about the screenshot system, where you can take pictures of paths you can't access yet, and that streamlines the exploration and backtracking process significantly. It's great, very helpful. My one small gripe with it is that you do have a limited amount of screen screenshots you can take, and there are ways to increase it, but it probably should just be unlimited from the start. The story is beautifully told with tons of cinematic moments and high quality cutscenes for a 2D side-scroller, but I wouldn't say the narrative is strictly all that memorable. I mean, it's definitely not bad, and the presentation is great, but it doesn't do anything too exciting or unpredictable, which is fine. It's got a more than serviceable story for what the game is. And the music is a great mix of like Middle Eastern rock and, you guessed it, hip-hop. I believe it's a contractual obligation for any character of African descent to come pre-packaged with trap hi-hats. But you know what? It sounds good, so I can't complain. Also, even though this video is about the Lost Crown, I also want to shout out the Rogue Prince of Persia soundtrack, because that game also came out this year, and the music is an absolute slapper, so go buy that game before it meets the same fate, you bunch of idiots. There are no real glaring problems with the Lost Crown in my opinion. I guess you could say it lacks the ethereal beauty of some of its popular Metroidvania contemporaries like Ori and Hollow Knight, but it's also so much more of a character action game than they are. And for what it's trying to be, I really don't see how it could have been done better. The only thing I was hoping for in a sequel were new abilities and maybe a more emotionally resonant story. I really don't have much else to say about the game because it just does everything it sets out to do as well as you can possibly hope for, and then ducks out after the exact right amount of time. I am happy at the very least that the talented devs that worked on this game are moving on to other projects instead of being laid off. I'm very excited for future Rayman projects as well, and we'll see how long Ubisoft wants to pretend that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still a thing, but it's honestly tragic that we likely won't see any sort of continuation of this iteration of Prince of Persia. I understand the circumstances. I also think the Prince of Persia name doesn't hold as much weight as it once did given its long hiatus, but up until recently, I just had hope that maybe the sales had been deceptively good all along. And honestly, this whole situation really frustrates me. People always say to vote with your wallets, but I think this game proved that consumers are much more preoccupied with dunking on games they think are boring from a company they don't like than talking about buying and encouraging games that they apparently want to see more of. It is very, very telling that this game's been discussed way more after the team has been shut down than after the game came out and people could have just shown their support. And I'm mad that this video, which was initially planned as a celebration of this game and a plea to go check it out if you haven't yet, turned into yet another post-mortem. So at the very least, I encourage everyone who hasn't to play this amazing game, and just let the devs know that you appreciate the work they did on it. Shoot out a tweet, send them an email or something, I don't know. Just, they deserve to know that they did a great job. Anyways, subscribe for more video essay speedruns, check out my main channel, it's on the screen right now, and I'll see you all next time.